Amendment is not adopted.
I have an amendment at the desk.
Gentlelady from Texas will, clerk will report. Gentleman from Arizona reserves point of order.
Substitute for the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 7187 offered by Ms. Jackson Lee.
Without objection, the amendment will be considered as read. The gentlelady from Texas is recognized to explain her amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I thank you very much. I do this not to be partisan or not to take seriously the amendment process. I've already indicated that this is an attack on humanity and really has no place here today. My amendment would, in essence, substitute the present language of 7187 for H.R. 4960, the China Gibson Stop the Transgender Murder Epidemic, which speaks to the rampant killing of women, transgender women, throughout America for a period of time. This is to make an important point and to send a clear message to the American people that we should not be supporting and uplifting those who are marginalized and discriminated against. We should not be uplifting persons who would marginalize and discriminate against individuals who are in the trans community. And we should be especially mindful of protecting individuals whose very existence subjects them to violence and murder. Specifically, my bill, H.R. 4960, or the new 7187, would establish a commission to study and develop proposals to combat the epidemic that is the murder of transgender, gender nonconforming, gender expansive, and transgender women of color. This bill is named after and in honor of a transgender woman who was tragically murdered on February 25, 2017, while she was in New Orleans celebrating Mardi Gras. It is a tragedy and epidemic what is happening to transgender black women who are being murdered across this country at a rate that is 7 times higher than the general population. In 2018, 26 transgender people were violently killed in the U.S., with the majority of them being black transgender women. In 2022, at least 34 transgender or gender nonconforming people were fatally shot or violently murdered. And so instead of marking up a dangerously discriminatory and harmful bill excluding transgender women, a measure that can surely amplify hate crimes. So instead of, let me correct that, instead of marking up a bill that would attack dangerous behavior and discriminatory behavior, we should be focused on what will help humanity and help people who are themselves, who are described as human beings. We must establish a commission to document and research issues gender conforming, gender expansive, and transgender women of color face, such as limited access to health care, public and private discrimination against this population, overshadowing the risk factors that the community faces. I met the family members and supportive community of this wonderful young woman who had every right to live, and her death is attributable only to her condition, only to her condition. Not that anything that she did, not at all. And she was a lovely young woman. Texas transgender women's killing highlights the disturbing trend. And so we need to make appropriate recommendations on how to educate the American public, how federal laws can uplift humanity, cannot stigmatize, can protect people who've lost loved ones. I'm not against harsh laws that will punish those who've done ill to others. We need to come together on how we do that in a way that we protect families. But the categorical banning on transgender women, athletes, and children are simply outrageous, and young women. In particular, H.R. 7871 does nothing to address actual barriers to women's equality in sports. It does nothing to help my sister from the state of Washington, her beautiful daughter, her family, the unity of her family, the love of her family. It does nothing to create a pathway for people whose humanity is different from mine. If Republican members really cared, they would offer a bill that provides solutions to women's sports equality and not spark fear against a vulnerable community. H.R. 7187 is simply, again, the Republicans' pathway to victory in November 2024. Let's find a group that we can categorize, demonize, and have everybody saying that if we vote for the other guys, they're going to support the demons that are out to get us. They're not out to get us. They're part of our extended family. And H.R. 7187 is simply the Republicans' popularity contest of bullying trans youth and stoking fear against transgender people. There have been 1,500 anti-LGBT bills over the couple of years. Republicans have set the record for the 4th year in a row with 589 bills introduced in 2023. In the state legislature, 174. We cannot stand by, Mr. Chairman. I don't think you want to stand by and do this. The Biden administration is opposed to this kind of language. No group has come to us and asked for this language. I stand ready to fight against this bill. I will not tolerate it. I have had this horrible experience of discrimination, the fear, the hatred. I will not have it. And so I ask my colleagues to support the Jackson Lee amendment.
Gentlelady yields back. Does the gentleman from Arizona insist on his point of order?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I do.
The gentleman insists on his point of order. Does the gentlelady wish to respond on the germaneness point of order?
I absolutely do, Mr. Chairman.
I expect so.
This underlying bill deals specifically with the trans community, though it may be dealing with athletics. This is a folder full of articles about the attacks on transgender, in particularly African-American women, but in particular, it goes to all aspects of their life. Athletics is a part of your life, and so I believe that this amendment is an appropriate ANS for the mission of this committee. This committee's mission is to use our laws to protect and uplift, not to discriminate, tear apart, and tear under. As we would say in places of worship, tear us under. It is to lift us up. It is to find ways to protect vulnerable populations. The trans community is a vulnerable population that should be protected, and I would argue that it is germane on the basis of the constitutional protections that my amendment would provide, as opposed to the constitutional conditions that would be torn down under the President 7187 as it's presently written. I maintain that it is germane.
The chair is prepared to rule. No one supports attacks on anybody, but the gentlewoman's amendment does not satisfy the subject matter and fundamental purpose test, therefore it is not germane and is out of order.
And, Mr. Chairman, I move to adjourn.
The gentlelady moves to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adjourn.
The gentlelady has a motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. No.
Roll call.
In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. A roll call being requested. The clerk will call the roll on the motion to adjourn.
Mr. Jordan?
No.
Mr. Jordan votes no. Mr. Issa? Mr. Buck? Mr. Buck votes no. Mr. Gates? Mr. Biggs? Mr. Biggs votes no. Mr. McClintock? Mr. McClintock votes no. Mr. Tiffany? Mr. Tiffany votes no. Mr. Massey? Mr. Massey votes no. Mr. Roy? Mr. Bishop? Ms. Sparts? Ms. Sparts votes no. Mr. Fitzgerald? Mr. Benz? Mr. Benz votes no. Mr. Klein? Mr. Armstrong? Mr. Armstrong votes no. Mr. Gooden? Mr. Gooden votes no. Mr. Van Drew? Mr. Nels? Mr. Moore? Mr. Kiley? Mr. Kiley votes no. Ms. Hageman? Ms. Hageman votes no. Mr. Moran? Mr. Moran votes no. Ms. Lee? Mr. Hunt?
Good, they're not here.
Mr. Fry?
Thomas.
Mr. Nadler?
Aye.
Mr. Nadler votes aye. Ms. Lofgren?
Aye.
Ms. Lofgren votes aye. Ms. Jackson Lee?
Aye.
Ms. Jackson Lee votes aye. Mr. Cohen? Mr. Johnson? Mr. Schiff? Mr. Swalwell? Mr. Liu? Ms. Jayapal? Ms. Jayapal votes aye. Mr. Correa? Ms. Scanlon? Ms. Scanlon votes aye. Mr. Neguse? Ms. McBeth? Ms. McBath votes aye. Ms. Dean? Ms. Dean votes aye. Ms. Escobar? Ms. Ross? Ms. Bush? Mr. Ivy? Mr. Ivy votes aye. Ms. Ballant? Mr. Moore votes no. Mr. Chairman, there are 8 ayes and 14 noes.
The motion is not agreed to. Who seeks recognition? Gentlelady from Indiana is recognized.
Thank you, Mr.
Speak on the bill.
Bill. I move to strike the last word. Thank you.